Yo,
Now, what are we doing?
just be Jed.
Why, why don't you be Jed and I'll be you?
That doesn't make any sense. I'm going to tell you about a private school that I went to in the mid 80s, but first, I'll let you hear a quick interview with a former teacher from the school. It'll catch you up to speed.
Well, let's do it.
Well, like Cosby said on Fat Albert, now sit back, maybe you might learn a lesson or two.
Scott, I don't think we're supposed to quote Cosby any longer.
You're not the boss of me. Today we've got Miss Darling Druckhammer. This is a real pleasure. This lady was a cornerstone at Eastern Avenue. We'd all just wound up at her class, even those that weren't her students. Everybody knew her. Everybody loved her. Just going to ask a little history of the school. Ms. Druckhammer, welcome in. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you, Scott.
So give me your experiences there. I'm telling the story of my time there, and people even that didn't go to school there knew about Harvey, knew about some of the things that went on there. I would love to have a voice from the inside there. What were your experiences there?
Well, there was a lot of good things that happened. We did a lot of good work for kids and stuff. Sometimes it was hard because everybody had different views on how they should do things. And sometimes we would run into Harvey and we would end up having to do it his way anyway. But it was just a regular type school atmosphere. I guess you would have the same kind of problems in school that you went to.
That's true. So my experience was I got sent there. Well, my sister was having some trouble in public school. Mom and Dad decided to send us to a private school in town where they thought they would probably avoid some of those. But it turns out, especially my sister's class, a lot of those kids were on the verge of getting kicked out of public school. And so they just kind of wound up there. And it made a strange mix of good church kids and kids that probably should have spent more time in church.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, a lot of the kids came from wild backgrounds. And they didn't want to do this and they didn't want to do that, but they learned really fast and quick that they were going to do it at Eastern Avenue, whether they liked it or not.
Right. So how did you wind up working there?
Well, Harvey asked me one day if I could substitute in the high school class. And I said, sure. And so he watched me off and on all day. And when the day was over, he said, I'm hiring you for next year. And I said, okay. And then Al went to work as a bookkeeper. And so that's how we got all three girls in.
And Al was your husband?
Yeah, all three. Al was working, and then we put all three girls in.
Well, my earliest memories of you there were all the high school kids. They would come to you. You were essentially a guidance counselor and a surrogate mom to a lot of those kids. Like, your role there was pretty big and pretty important.
Well, thank you.
That's the truth. Tell us.
I didn't know it at the time.
Well, I guess we never do looking back, but you were very valuable. He made that school a lot better the day he brought you on, for sure.
Well, thank you. We did a lot of firsts. We did the first prom. We did the first homecoming. And then we started having some of that stuff year in and year out. But football had started up, and right at the beginning, it was kind of bare bones. And then we just kept adding stuff as the years went on. And then the next year, he added a grade. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I showed up in the 5th grade and did most of my 6th grade there, Miss Banks and then Miss Garrison. And then I just remember from the first year I was there to the second, that's when they had the new building and the library.
Right.
And it seemed like it turned into, like Pinocchio, I'm finally a real boy. It was like a real school.
That's when, yeah, you're right there.
But what happened? How did the wheels fall off of that place? They don't even have a website now, and very few people remember the place as a functioning school.
I don't know, because when, it's been a while since they sold the school. They sold that building.
Oh, they did?
Yes. It's a Buddhist temple now.
It's a Buddhist temple. Good Lord. It may as well be a flea market. Like, boy, there's a lot to unwind here or unravel. So he opened the school as a function of the church, like to have a school at the church.
Right. think he basically did it because his kids were having troubles in public school.
Wow. Again, not to get out the rails here, but didn't one of his kids deck the principal in the cafeteria? Vance or
I vaguely remember that.
Vance or Don? I think it was Don.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, it was just kind of a motley crew of kids
It
that
was.
wound up. Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us about a couple of your experiences there. I know the rumor of you packing your car full of kids to go meet a band in Norman, but I didn't know who it was, or I didn't know much about it.
Well, you'd had to pick. I'm not sure who the first one was. I did take my kids to see Night Ranger. I might have taken others. The ones that we went to see Quiet Riot, a whole bunch of us. In those days, they came to the record stores.
Yeah.
And they would, Wayne Chung was another one that I took people to. And let's see, Quiet Riot. And there were several other Van Halen. Well, I took a whole bunch of kids to the Van Halen concert.
See, that's why we showed up at your classroom. You had a good mix. You know, it was grounded. You were grounded in your faith, and you carried that in your classroom. But you know, you want to go to a Van Halen show? We're gonna go. We're gonna go.
Well, I figured the first concert I ever took any of the kids to, my kids, and were the ones that went to see Duran Duran. And then from then on, it kind of rose, Scott. This one was coming to town, and somebody had said something, and I was like, "Well, if you're gonna go, I'll take you and make sure you don't get in trouble."
Oh my gosh,
that was the main thing.
That's a great excuse to get to see a bunch of good shows.
No, I enjoyed it.
Such a great story. So, did you have any experience teaching before that, or was it you just dive in?
No. I didn't have a degree or anything. I had graduated from high school. That was sum total. And but my grandmother was a teacher, and I had been in a classroom since I was 3 years old. When she taught high school chemistry at 3, I was sitting in her class. So all I knew growing up was school. And so I used to teach all my dolls. I had a little blackboard, and I taught all my dolls. I taught my brother and sister everything they knew before they went to school. I've been a teacher all my life. There's a God-given talent.
Did Harvey just run out of steam, or did he not have anybody behind him to carry that thing on? I mean, it made money, and I hate to bring that into the fold here, but you can't do it free. And so I wonder why it didn't continue after he retired. All right, I'll cut in real quick. She didn't have a great answer for that, but no one could really know what was going on inside. But she did go into some detail about one of the 3 times that Harvey Spear fired her in her tenure there. And this one's just nutty.
Well, I didn't quite retire. He told me to leave. Yeah, I was excommunicated from the church too, but for different reasons. But I mean, he had a really hard time with me after I got my divorce.
Oh, yeah.
So that was some of the stuff. We felt like I did the wrong thing. And that my kids were not going to turn out good because I did it. And my kids did turn out well.
Yeah, I'll say. Yeah.
It was a hard thing. And then finally he said, this is it. And I said, okay.
So you were let go from...
Yep. Yes, I was.
Oh, good night.
And a lot of it had to do with some of the things. What happened also was one of the other teachers and I wanted to start our own school. And we got as far as the city was going to let us have the old high school. It was a high school or elementary school that was over there.
On Broadway?
It's called the old school now, yeah.
Yeah.
And we started fixing it up, and everybody knows this. Harvey went to the city council and they shut us all down.
You would have Pied Pipered half of his kids out of that school had you done that.
Yeah, well, and not only that, we wanted it to be an arts also included, not only education, but arts.
Oh my goodness. I did not know that.
Yeah.
So
it was well known at the time because that's when all the school split up. Mary Morgan left, I left. I was asked by some of the parents of the younger kids to homeschool. So I homeschooled for 5 years. And then after that, it split it, and people went different places because they were not happy about the things that Harvey had done about while the teachers left, they weren't sure. And then from then on is when they had their problems.
Good night.
I knew how that goes.
Right.
It shouldn't have bothered, but things do. I mean,
Goodness. Yeah. The stories I've heard, particularly Susan's group was, well, for those that don't know, my sister, Susan, she was 3 years ahead of me. And that group was just much different than mine. My classroom was more traditional Christian school classroom. Hers was not. So.
Yeah, I know. We had classes. Remember, there was a house next to the school, the White House, and we had classes in there.
Oh, yeah.
I had a typing class in there and all that. I would have to get on the phone and call and see if everybody was over there so I could get over there and teach. Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. It sounds like Little House on the Prairie.
Your sister and Stacy Anderson and all those were the ones that were in those classes over there.
Yeah. My sister, and as far as I know, Stacy, everybody that was taught by you would run through a wall for you to this day. So you, like I said earlier, you left a real impact. And Harvey didn't handle that well from what it sounds like. I just don't understand how that place didn't sustain itself. I know my parents were paying through the nose for us to go, and just for 2 kids. I'm certainly not suggesting there was any kind of financial malfeasance or anything, but boy, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, it sounds like you do know.
Dead and gone now. So.
Yeah, well, I'll say there's a gold Buddha out there now, so I guess it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Well, there's got to be a group on Facebook or somewhere of alumnus with stories of that place. I'd love to run into that because I know there's a lot of people. And you know what? Part of it is we grew up in Moore, and we were lucky, in the 80s in Moore. It was a great town, and there are lifelong friends that I have from the schools I've gone to and the athletics I was involved with. And so that extends over there too. Susan still talks to a lot of her buddies from Eastern Avenue, and somehow we all survived it. So a couple of things before we get out of here. One, that you said earlier that you initiated homecoming and you brought a lot of tradition to that place that it wouldn't have had.
Yeah, we didn't have a lot because, it was starting bare bones. They hadn't been in, by the time I got there, they hadn't been in operating for an awfully long time because he was concentrating more on trying to get the curriculums all ready and for the next grade to be to go ahead and add another grade the next year and stuff like that. So they didn't do a lot of that kind of stuff. And of course, I'd been to high school and I had fun. We had proms, but I know it was a Christian school. So we had to kind of we could do ball game, the homecomings and all that kind of stuff. But the prom was a big one. And the kids kind of got all behind that. And finally, Harvey relented and we went ahead and had the prom. And it was a whole lot of fun. But also, you probably didn't know that senior year that Don Spear and David Fairfold and all of them, we went to Galveston. We had a senior trip to Galveston. And we rented a house in Galveston and spent 3 or 4 days. And then we came.
I did not know.
Pretty well behaved. We had parents down there too, and everybody pretty well behaved, and we all had a really good time. And I don't know, we didn't do that after that. So if they had senior trips, they did them closer to home.
Well, that's something that is a real credit to you. I remember from my first year to my second, it became a school, and cheerleaders and football and pep rallies, and that just flat out did not exist the year before. And I remember that change, and I've heard others credit you for dragging that school to the 20th century. And you gave a lot of kids a real school experience that they wouldn't have had at that place without you.
Well, thank you.
That's the truth.
I enjoyed every minute of it. I miss that. I really do. I miss all the kids.
Yeah, it was It was a different kind of place for sure. And I wanted your perspective, of course. I've got Susan's and some of her classmates, and whew, some of that stuff in those classrooms that happened above the gym. Remember those 3 or 4 classrooms up there?
Yeah.
Yeah, you had a classroom up there, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Not indicting you on any of the nonsensory up there, but man, there's some stories. And again, there were a few luminaries from that place that stood out, and you were certainly one of them. I'm so happy I got to talk to you about that.
Well, thank you. Kids call me, and then I have 500 and something of them on my Facebook.
Oh my gosh, that is so great. Well, thank you. I appreciate your time, and man, it's so good catching up and hearing about the girls and hearing that you're doing so well.
You're welcome. Love you.
Love you. Bye. All right, we got a little change today. Jed is not with us. I got stand-in Jed. We'll call him Eddie.
When
Eddie,
you
welcome
say
in.
that, glad to be here. When you say Jed is not with us, did he pass?
I mean, he passed that dime that he accidentally swallowed once, but he's fine. No,
Okay,
Jed
great.
Jed's just out of pocket today, and this story's got to be told, man.
I want to hear it.
So that was Darlene Druckhammer. She was, like I indicated in the interview, just a staple at the early days of Eastern Avenue Christian Academy in Moore, Oklahoma.
She sounded like a nice, sweet lady.
She is both of those, but she was as close as you could get to one of us as a bridge to. She clearly was an adult, had 3 daughters, was the teacher, but she was just the best. I have never heard anyone who spent time at Eastern Avenue or spent time around her, frankly, that didn't walk away just loving her. She was just the best and always an advocate for the kids there. And so, like I indicated in the interview, she is the reason that school became, boy, I don't want to say what it did because it became something not great, but she's the reason that place held it together the way it did.
Wow.
So a little background here. Eastern Avenue, oddly enough, was located on Eastern Avenue in Moore, Oklahoma. I went to school there in parts of the 5th grade and part of the 6th grade. My previous foray into Christian education was at Moore Christian Academy across town. They called it MCA.
Which one was better?
What do you mean better?
Like you had Moore Christian Academy and then this one. Which one was better?
Moore Christian Academy was more of a school, like a function. Like it had. Well, they all just seem like Sunday school classes. Like it's not. It's not public school with the bell and the busy and the hallway shuffle and athletics the way it is at a public school. I would say Moore Christian Academy, just because I think maybe they were around longer, so they kind of had their footing. When I went there in the 4th grade, I went to what could only be described as one of the laziest field trips ever. We went to McDonald's.
For a field trip?
For a field trip, yeah. And I just remember I was in the 4th grade and I was climbing through Mayor McCheese's head there and thinking, this sucks. My parents are paying tuition and we're not going to the zoo or a local science museum, the Omniplex. We're at McDonald's. Presumably the teacher was hungover. I don't know. But we took a tour.
Is this pre or post ball pit McDonald's?
Oh, this is pre. This is the hot as hell metal toys that we crawled through on the playground.
Got it.
The slick brown tile. We got to walk through the kitchen and look at the board employees with the paper hats. We got to pour our own soft drinks, which was a big deal because we all got suicides.
Yeah.
We ate our crappy hamburger and then we went back to church, we went back to school. But anyway, our field trip, everybody loading up in the bus and going to McDonald's. That school closed down. I can't help but think because the senior pastor and head of the school there went to federal prison in 1985 for fraud. I think it probably had a lot to do with that school closing down. And from what I'm about to tell you here of my experience at Eastern Avenue, there were two Christian schools in town. He was probably the better pillar of the community of the two heads of the school.
How is that if he went to federal prison?
Well, Harvey Spear just didn't get caught.
Okay. He was more nefarious than the other one.
Right. So there were similarities between the two schools. MCA didn't have any kind of organized school sports from what I can remember. Eastern Avenue did. Did I say MCA? MCA didn't. And Eastern Avenue did.
Got it.
I guess the similarities. Go ahead.
Quick question. Eastern, is that the one that's really close to Moore High School?
Yes. Yeah. That's going to be important here in a second.
Okay,
So
got it.
I guess the similarities were we would draw band logos on the offertory envelopes during chapel with the little golf pencils.
Are we talking like Rat, Van Halen?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
The Aussie with the lines through the Z's for some reason.
Got it.
And that plays a part in this because before I left MCA, they were going to make us sign forms saying that we wouldn't listen to rock music. I think maybe dance. I don't know. It sounds a little like the Footloose Town, but just not as much to do. So,
wow.
Yeah. So it was good. Anyway, he later got sprung from federal prison and I think assumed his role back there at the school, but it didn't last a whole lot longer after that. So in the 5th grade, I went to Eastern Avenue. It's now Toby Keith Boulevard, by the way. And like I had talked to Darlene earlier, talked to Miss Druckhammer, pardon me. Between the 5th and 6th grades, it really transformed into a functioning school, classrooms, and it wasn't just part of the church where the church Sunday school rooms were a classroom. It had a standalone building and athletics program. But, the way she described it, and I didn't know this at the time, none of the kids knew, but she said she was fired 3 times while she was working there. I guess like Harvey ran that place kind of like an old county boss, like, hired her and fired her during the same lunch.
Well, if I heard her correctly, she didn't get fired for not having teacher credentials.
No, boy, that's another story. But no, she was fired, of course, because she said there was a divorce, and I don't know, another couple of reasons. Just on a whim. That's just how I kind of ran the place. So my sister ran with a rough crowd that wound up at this school. And of course, not everybody. It was a good mix of like good local Christian kids. Parents like earnestly wanted them to get a Christ-backed education, and then kids that had been kicked out of public school. It didn't. It was like oil and water. It didn't mix that well. But her class, especially, man, there were drug deals. I have on very good authority that there were sex acts throughout the school when teachers weren't around, after chapel in the baptistry.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot in my life. That's the first time I've heard that one.
Well, from all the stories I heard, it was oral. So I guess because they're Baptist,
Yeah.
they're not gonna dance.
How far is too far? I guess that wasn't too far.
There was a backdrop of good kids there, and then these other kids. Like it was a zoo with a cross on the door, I guess is the best way to put it.
So did you good kids, students go home and tell your parents about what was going on, or do you guys keep your mouth shut?
Well, that's a good question. I didn't know. I was in the 6th grade. My sister was in high school. I didn't know that stuff was going on. My class was just full of little wise asses that, again, it had a mix of kids that were kind of rough. I can think of a couple off the top of my head, and then a couple of kids whose parents went to that church, and then just well-meaning, people like my parents who just thrusted me into that. And it was it was strange. Like an example, we we had gym class, and so we all went down to the gym, and the teachers would just like hang out. And but there was no gym teacher a couple of times. We were just running around in the gym like little hellions. And I
It's
remember
like
going
Lord
up
of the Flies, right?
a little bit, yeah. But with King James Bibles swinging at each other. I
Ah,
remember Ricky Toops and his brother was over there trying to learn how to break dance. And Toops is a touring musician now that could just kill it with a keyboard, man. So we came out of it okay. But I remember going back upstairs and saying, "Hey, there's no gym teacher. Like, we're just kind of we're starting to form tribes."
mm.
so he came down there and got the kids back, and it was just it was a mess.
Did the non-church kids, did they terrorize the church kids, or did they stick to themselves?
No, that's it. But part of it was because it was the 80s and people were just kind of laid back, and it was a cross between, it was just there wasn't much melding between the two, but nobody was hostile. Everybody kind of got along. It's just you had the guys with the long hair and the 5 or 6 whiskers that knew where to get weed, and then
So
you had,
there's no dress code,
yeah, there was a dress code, but I mean,
but not
jeans and
hair.
a right. Yeah. I think maybe there was that. I didn't have any, there weren't any Ted Nugent heads around there,
Got
but
it.
yeah. Yeah, that's the truth. There is a Facebook page that I ran across that's got kids like from the 90s that went to school there. And so I was long gone by then. I was like late 80s, and I was in high school. And so I just didn't remember that school being really all that relevant. And I guess it just kind of like I said, it was a cross between Fast Times at Richmond High and kind of summertime Bible school.
Wow.
So
That Facebook page, do the kids have fond memories, or are they still in therapy?
yeah, there are some fond memories. Like, it was a good time, for a lot of them it was a great time. But I just remember when I was a kid, it would go out to the playground, and the high school kids, they had a driver's ed car. It was an AMC Eagle,
Mm.
like with one hubcap, like aftermarket wood paneling. Like, I was gonna fix it up, and we're walking to the playground, and like they hadn't driven that thing in a couple of hours, and it's still like in the parking lot. It was just terrible. And Susan said they'd get in it, and my sister, I'm sorry, Susan, would get in it, and like it wouldn't crank sometimes, and the guy would just like simulate what you would do if you were driving, and yeah, it was rough. And so I don't know. Let's see, let me back up here. Well, I touched on in the interview, like she was like Miss Druckheimer was integral in the early days of that school, but that's when it kind of hit the crossroads. The wheels kind of fell off that second year when there was an actual school building. When the head of the school, who was the senior pastor at the church there, his kid punched the female principal in the face in the cafeteria in front of all the other kids. Like, and nothing happened. Like, it was just like, oh, I got out of line there. I should probably do better, I guess. I don't know where the line drew. My parents were paying tuition for this place for me and my sister, and I don't know where the money went. Like, it there were a bunch of kids there, like from daycare to eventually senior high, like a senior class. And
Can I go back to the senior pastor's son punching the female principal in the face in front of everybody, and nothing happens?
yeah, I
Nothing?
probably shouldn't have glossed over that. He was, first of all, and there's no excuse for this, but she was a school marm type, at
Ah,
which there's never
so you were
any
saying she
excuse
had
for
it
that.
coming.
No, that's what I was getting at. There's never an excuse for that. But a lot of the kids were like, I don't condone this, but I don't necessarily uh not. Like, it was just, when like when just like crazy stuff's going on when you're a kid. It's just like part of the deal. You don't know that it's abnormal. And like he just popped her. And I think she went down. And I was like, what are you doing? Like you can't do that. And like half the kids were like, yeah. And as far as I know, he was in school. What are you gonna do? Suspend the head guy's kid? Like there's a hierarchy there. Actually, I think he might have gone to work for that school after he graduated.
Of course he did.
Which Yeah, which, you don't say it in the interviews when he's interviewing teachers, but if you get on the line, I'll probably hit you in front of everybody.
Oh, they probably already knew.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if there's a Christian high school in Moore now, because I know that MCA folded. And again, it's not so much their fault as it is, the pastor of that church. Well, he went to federal prison for fraud. So that's kind of hard to recoup from that.
I was going to say that's a tough bounce back.
Yeah, it's hard to do that. And part of that's not his fault. I mean, it's hard to run a Christian school and concern yourself with tuition when people just want to focus on your federal fraud conviction. The other thing is Eastern Avenue as a unit, like it was there. And this is where I get kind of in the weeds here because I don't know the inner workings of the school. I was a kid there. I can only know like the fruit of, what it bears. When I was at the high school, Moore High School, it was the biggest school in the state before they split. It's a huge school. Had over 100 kids, 130 something that went out for 2 days. I remember my junior year, like, before the cut. So before that, Oklahoma Sun does a lot of the cutting for the coaches. And I just remember like Friday nights, playing in front of 20,000 people. The place is full, and helicopters would land there at the end, and coaches would come in the press box. Media was there. It was a huge deal. It was Oklahoma football. Harvey Spear called me. I'd gone to school there before. He called me, and I found out later he called my best buddy Travis and another couple of guys from the team. But he told me he offered me a scholarship to come play football there.
So you're no longer attending that Christian school, and you're now attending public Moore High School.
Yes.
Got it.
So I'm in high school. I'm playing football, got the uniform. He calls an alumnus. He calls me. He says, hey, come to school here. We're going to get a state championship here at Eastern Avenue. You're going to be part of it. And I said, so what do you mean? And I felt weird because I was back there and everything looked smaller. Everything just looked danker because, I had been out, in the world. And he said, yeah, I'm willing to offer you a scholarship to come to school here and play ball and anchor that defense. And it was 8-man football, by the way. It was below single A. Like 8-man, it was essentially that red Oklahoma dirt that you scratch some hash marks on. And so that was his offer. And I thought, that's not going to happen. I was respectful to him. And he said, look, you don't have to go to class. You can sit in Carol's office, Carol Munden, the music guy, and you can read comic books all day, which is exactly what he told my buddy Travis. I didn't know that. I didn't know it at the time, but he like years later, he told me that, that weird guy at that little private school next to the school. And literally there is a picture on the Facebook page of some cheerleaders at Eastern Avenue pointing at the Mavericks. That was our mascot sign. And in the background, you can see my high school, like walking distance. And of course, that huge stadium is right there. So on Friday nights when they're playing ball, you could hear the band, you could hear the crowd noise when there's a touchdown at the real stadium, like less than, 1,000 yards, like certainly within earshot. And you can see it. The lights were, blinding. And so they're playing 8-man football in the dirt over there. And he says, hey, just come on over to Eastern Avenue and get your free education that you're not going to get because you don't have to go to class. Because he wanted that 8-man championship, which I think he eventually got, by the way. But
so he's he's communicating with students on this and not going through parents?
Right.
Wow.
You know what? until right now, I haven't considered how weird that is.
Yeah. Welcome
That's a
to
good
adulthood,
point.
Scott.
Right. I don't think Travis, John and Sharon Few, I don't think they showed up at that meeting. But he was just trying to poach, the biggest, fattest guys he could find
Yeah.
to come be an 8-man football. And it kind of me and Few and a couple of other those, like a couple of the skill guys came over there. We would have dominated 8-man football. Good Lord.
Was there any part of you that was tempted by that offer?
Boy, I liked being courted. A girl likes to be asked. But not enough to get rid of, not enough to turn in my helmet of the school that, since the second grade playing school league, like elementary league football, we'd pass that big stadium, go into my little league games. And that was my aspiration to be on that field. No, not really. They
Hey,
didn't, I think
Scott,
their weight room. Go ahead.
I was going to say, just a quick sidebar. Does Moore High School still have that same feel and energy that they did back when you played?
Probably more. Well, part of the term, but
Mm.
they do 7-on-7 drills now, and they've got their own press. They get those professional photographs, and like they're, if you're making a big tackle and you sweat flying everywhere, and they've got those high def, like those packages that they send to colleges and stuff. It may even be a bigger deal now. It seems to be from a distance, but
Wow.
yeah, it's cool, and they do it well. Oklahoma, that whole culture, that football, high school football, that in Texas, that whole part of the country, it's a big deal. And the nerve on that guy to say, I'm gonna poach some, and I think he did get a couple of kids that, you ride the pine at a big high school like that, you dominate 8-man football when you're playing little bitty Oklahoma cow pasture towns, and like it's not fair, but they got scholarships to get that sweet, sweet education of Archie comics in Munden's office.
And
But he
Mad
got his
Magazine.
championship. Yes, probably highlights.
Yes.
You're circling the hidden objects.
Absolutely right now.
So that's that. Everybody seems to have weathered it okay. There's a couple of people that were caught in compromising situations there. I remember a kid in my class named Dennis that kept getting in trouble for going out back and standing under the stairs on Wednesday when girls had to wear dresses. Yeah. So, you get what you get.
Who hasn't done that?
I got to check on Dennis. I bet you. I bet you he's done some time somewhere.
Yeah, he's on a registry somewhere right now.
Yeah, it was something. We had a weird band leader. We had a little like ragtag band where people learned to, play instruments. Well, I don't have to explain what band is in school. And he was kind of an oddball. From what I understand and I didn't have visibility of this when, 5th and 6th grade, but Mr. Druckheimer told me that teachers were just coming and going left and right, getting fired on a whim. And so I don't know what the appeal is. I think it was, public school. My kid's getting in trouble in public school. Let me put him in here where a bunch of drug dealers are going to school. It's the school. It's not my piece of crap kid. So they throw him in there, and it's kind of an incubator for nonsense.
Well, and also, and this is in no disrespect to your teacher that we listened to earlier, but the fact that all she had was a high school education in order to be a teacher at this school, I'm not sure how that would be received by the parents, or perhaps the parents didn't care. They just thought, well, my kid's in a Christian school, everything's going to be great.
I think my parents thought that you get your textbooks and you learn what you're supposed to learn, and the teacher's got a bigger textbook with the answers in the back of it. So we're in good shape. We got this.
Well, I used to be a high school teacher, and that's not far from the truth.
Oh my God. It's like your doctor feverishly Googling what you're telling him's wrong with you.
Exactly. It's the same thing.
Oh my gosh. Well, she did tell me after the interview, we were talking, and she did tell me that she went to school and did get her degree. And
oh, cool.
So
that makes it a little bit better.
Well, it makes it better in that she was sincere and wanted to do the right thing, even though it wasn't required of her there. Like I don't know. I do know that it's it's a testament to what might have been a good idea was poorly executed. And I think there was some real money made there. I don't know that it was all accounted for, but when you just run the numbers of what we were paying to go there and what we were receiving for that, there was a little like a building off to the side that had a typing class my sister told me about. They would utilize everything. Of course, they weren't sinking money in the driver's ed cars or the football uniforms that looked like they were borrowed or stolen, mismatched helmets, and it was something. It's now, oddly enough, that building is now a Buddhist temple.
Well, there you go.
According to the map here, Trung Tam Phat Gayo
What?
is where I went to the fifth and sixth grade at Trung Tam Phat Gayo. I went to their Facebook page, and my old gym is now essentially a ballroom that features karaoke for their parties. It looks like a good time. I might go.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd stand out at all.
Is it open to the public?
I don't know, but I've always wanted to tower 18 inches, 2 feet above people. Like as I walk through, I'm 6'2", pasty white skin, red hair, blue eyes. I think I might be, I'm not saying God, certainly not God, but a God to them.
I'm going to bow out of this right now.
I don't know. It's cultural. Because when you think Moore, Oklahoma, you certainly think Buddhists.
Yes.
Well, that's my story of Eastern Avenue. I don't know when the demise happened. According to the Facebook page here that the kids are on, it functioned for several years after that. I do know they got a state football title. That helps. But where their football field is, I guess, if that's what you want to call it, I think it's a daycare now. There's a building sitting there.
Oh, wow.
All good things have to end. And so does that one ended as well. I don't know if that was a good one.
So what about the pastor who ran the whole thing? Where did he end up?
I talked to a guy named Danny Hooper, who was my sister's age, and he had a brother that was in my class. I talked to him a couple of days ago, and he said that he stayed in town there, and he was the on-call pastor for the funeral home there on Broadway, right downtown. And so Danny's dad, Ned, spent the night at their house before. Ned died in 2002. Danny told me that Harvey Spear preached his dad's funeral at that funeral home, didn't recognize Danny or his brother, didn't mention his dad, who I think they went to church there. Act like he didn't even remember him. And he just pay the lady out front. And so he just kind of fizzled out. He had an 8-man football empire, and he couldn't hold on to it.
Good gracious.
I kind of want some lemongrass chicken now.
Why? I don't get the correlation.
It's pretty good Vietnamese fare. I can tell you how to have it.
Got it.
So I don't know if you had similar experiences in elementary school, but that's my story.
No, I didn't. I grew up straight public school the whole time, so I cannot relate to what you've been through or what you experienced. So that's a unique perspective, and I'm sure you've got a host of other people out there that have similar stories, and hopefully they'll listen to this podcast and they'll hit you up and share some things, and you can do a part 2 addendum of real stories from behind the walls.
I would love to. Among the first few episodes we've recorded was one about an absurd fundraising event for my youth group at my church. And then this one, I don't want to scare people away that may be listening to this to come to Central Oklahoma, and if they're believers, but just with anything, watch a step.
Yeah. Hey, listen, my daughter and son-in-law lived in Tulsa for a while, and they've got some church stories of their own up there. So I think it's universal to the entire state.
Did they go to Van Halen with Miss Druckhammer?
They did not.
Or did they even go to church?
Yeah, they did.
Okay.
There's some
Eddie,
Tulsa's a whole different place. They got some, people make pilgrimages to Tulsa for the ministries and things that are up there, and I think it's spread worldwide. So if you've never made a pilgrimage to Tulsa to go see, never mind.
I've seen the clapping hands coming out of the ground. I thought that was kind of cool.
That could be where they went to school. They've got stories of their own there. You could have them on later.
Did they dance? They didn't dance, did they?
There was the rules at we'll just call the university Oral Roberts University. I don't want to give it away. So you could barely date, you couldn't dance, you couldn't listen to secular music, you honor code, you had to be in by a certain time, and it was very restrictive in every sense of the word.
Well, if his name was Oral, he could have gone to Eastern Avenue.
Yeah, he could have.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we got it. I think that's what we came here for, and I think we did it.
Thanks, Scott. I appreciate you having me. I know I'm not your good buddy, but I appreciate you letting me fill in today.
Well, if you weren't there, you missed out. Hearing some of the stories of the place over the past couple of weeks sounds like I missed out too. But you don't have to. Hit us up on our socials at Free Nights and Weekends. All our contact information is on our Facebook page. Drop us a line or call the number and leave us a voicemail. We listen to them and we appreciate the feedback. I can't believe I asked you that.
What was the question?
If Carol Munden is gay.
I don't know. Whatever happened to him?
Well, I'm going to tell you something. If he wasn't, he missed a great opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
I brought my